This is Up Close. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. What does money mean to us? In our society, it's often much more than just a means to buy stuff. Sometimes, money is the way we communicate values of who we are and how we pass those values on to the next generation. How do we get on the right side of those values? New York Times columnist Paul Sullivan attempts to answer those questions in The Thin Green Line, The Money Secrets of the Super Wealthy. And then, sometimes, money is an instrument of the government and banks that makes us give up a level of control that we're not comfortable with. Exploring new solutions to take those institutions out of the equation is Wall Street Journal columnist Michael Casey, who is co-author of The Age of Cryptocurrency: How Bitcoin and Digital Money Are Challenging the Global Economic Order. But first, here's my interview with Paul Sullivan. So I want to start off actually with something you get to near the end of your book, which there's this visualization exercise with a tape measure of what are we doing with money? What are we saving for? What are we working so hard for? And this was one of the starkest visualizations I could possibly imagine.
I'm out in Manhattan, Kansas, which is where Kansas State University is, and they have this department of, the Department of Financial Planning, and within that they have this school that is sort of looking at the psychology of money, sort of all the baggage we have around money. And part of this is I'm talking to one of the professors, and he's saying, how long do you think you're going to live? And I said, I don't know. He says, when have your grandparents died? I tell him, he says, let's call it 85. I said, okay, fine, 85 is good. He takes the tape measure and he holds it up 85 inches, cuts it off. Okay, so now it's hanging there, and he says, how old are you now? At the time I was 39. And he goes to 39 inches and cuts it off. And he says, this is what's left. Now, in this exercise, I'm wired to all of these sensors that are telling me, sort of my heart rate, how my fingers are sweating. And as you can imagine, everything sort of spikes at that moment because it's this guttural reaction of, that's it. Like, that's all that's left.
And one of the lessons there is it stands to a degree in contrast with the better financial advice in the world and a lot of the financial advice in your book, which is that when you look at that 46 inches that's left, and you said, well, I hope to retire at 70 and at 15, and then there's 15 years left. And he said to you, are you sure you want to be saving all your money for the next 30 years in order to only spend it, only travel, only do all these things that you plan to do in retirement with that last 15? Wouldn't you rather spread some of the joy in life throughout, the other 2/3?
In an ideal world, money is just a means of exchange. You have more of it, you have more choice of it. You have less of it, you don't have as many choices. That's it. But they talk about how we have these deep, deep associations with money. So in my case, it was money vigilance. And money vigilance comes from having some sort of, well, it comes from many things, but in my case, it came from a childhood in which there was a bit of want. There wasn't enough money to go around, and I also saw money causing problems, parents fighting over money. And so somebody who's vigilant about money is going to save, 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 which is what I do. And the good side of that is you're probably not going to run out of money. You're not going to end up broke. But the bad side is that you're not going to have as much enjoyment as you should in life. And of course, there are other scripts.
Money is this projection of the way we feel about the world, the way we feel about things, the way we feel about ourselves, is how we treat ourselves with money and how we act around money. And sometimes, a lot of our money problems aren't really money problems. They're just life problems.
The chapter I have on entitlement, it's essentially the chapter on do you give money to your kids? This is, for many people, this is a champagne problem, when we all wish we had so much left over that we're wondering, what do we give to our kids? But it comes down to a very basic premise. Nobody wants their kids to turn out to be entitled brats. And through that chapter, I talk about, sure, there could be people who stand to inherit $3 million, $30 million, $300 million, big sums of money. But there are also people who are equally entitled, and they may inherit $30,000, or their parents may be the biggest fish in the smallest pond of some, teeny tiny town somewhere. And entitlement is a great fear, but we think it's about money, but at the end of the day, it's about decisions and choices that the parents made. I mean, in some way, in that chapter, I talk about how I think people of more modest means are teaching their kids more valuable lessons about money.
And now, Bitcoin and what it means for you with Michael Casey. Let's start with this. what is Bitcoin?
Oh, that's the question. You'd think that'd be like a 25-word answer, easy one to deal with. Ironically, it's not that easy. But I'm going to give you what we use. It's a digital system, a monetary system for exchanging value online amongst parties anywhere. I mean, we tend to think of it as a currency, and we talk about it as a currency, but it's actually something much sort of broader than that, and that is it's a technology that runs exchanges in an disintermediated way, I should say, where there are no middlemen in between. So.
Right, it's the way of money that we might increasingly think of the money that we have already, where so many of us rarely, if ever, touch actual cash for most of our transactions. And so what if you just decided, well, we're going to do it entirely without banks, entirely without credit cards?
What's revolutionary about Bitcoin is it resolves that problem by sort of putting the question of the validity of each person's claims to the test of a consensus of all these computers that are working in a network. So they're able to check that somebody who's agreeing to transfer money actually has that money to transfer. Otherwise, you'd just be able to digitally counterfeit this claim. If all it was just a PDF of a kind of a digital dollar, you could just make another one and just be counterfeiting it. So you've got to keep track of everybody's balances, and that's what Bitcoin does. It's found a way to have a community of a community of computers do that work.
And so what's an example of why Bitcoin is such a big deal? What makes it revolutionary for someone in the world?
Right at the outset of the book, we use an example that we think's kind of pretty telling. There is a fairly large group of young women in Afghanistan who work for this blogging site, basically writing blogs, producing videos, and they earn money for it. Not a lot, but they earn some money. This is a group called the Film Annex, and they're doing it through a charity called the Women's Annex. And the founder of that organization has decided that everybody on that site should be paid in Bitcoin. This is really important for a girl in Afghanistan because no longer do they need to have a bank account. You can directly receive your money simply by opening a wallet on a computer, which anybody can do, and really, you know, it's very hard to stop anybody from doing that, which means that you're actually subverting the patriarchal society that would have prevented so many women from gaining access to their own instruments of financial exchange.
That's all for this week's abbreviated web episode of Up Close. A reminder, you can see the full episode of Up Close on the Jewish channel on cable, or listen to the full audio of the show as a podcast, available on iTunes and your favorite podcast player. The Jewish channel is available on cable, Time Warner Cable Channel 1640, IOPLink Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Cox Cable Channel 1, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and on Comcast on the on-demand menu on premium channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.